Hey Star Trek fans, welcome to another Star Trek Discovery episode review, this time for episode 8 of the series, an episode with a Latin title that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. Instead, I will give you the English translation. It stands for, "If you want peace, prepare for war." The episode begins with a pitched battle between the USS Gagarin and a number of Klingon vessels. The captain sends a distress signal just before the USS Discovery appears in order to assist. Discovery does her best, but with a crew that isn't exactly battle-hardened, not to mention missing their chief tactical officer, the Gagarin is sadly lost to a Klingon torpedo. As a quick aside, does this shot not remind you of the original series? Granted, a corridor shaking looks much the same as another, but something about the choreography and look of this shot really reminds me of TOS. Also, I think these guys are really taking that disco nickname to heart. With the loss of the Gagarin, Lorca orders their withdrawal and Discovery spore jumps away. As Stamets is being disconnected, he seems disoriented, calling Tilly captain and then snapping at her when he realizes his mistake. This moment raises a lot of questions. Later in the episode, we'll learn from Stamets that after being in the spore drive, he experiences a moment where what he knows changes. Is he contacting or existing in other realities while using the drive? We know from the previous episode that he can exist somewhat outside the space-time continuum. Will this be an issue going forward? Almost certainly yes. Lorca confers with Admiral Tyrell in his ready room. Also, note that after a long absence, the Tribble is back. I wonder if Lieutenant Tyler will be visiting the ready room anytime soon. Anyway, the Admiral informs him that two other ships, the USS Hoover and Muroc, were also ambushed and destroyed by Klingon forces, all of which seem to have the ability to cloak, which makes the away mission that Michael Burnham is on even more crucial. We then join that landing party consisting of Burnham, Saru, and Ash Tyler on the planet Pavo. Pavo is a unique world that emits a unique sound and EM signature out into space via a huge, seemingly naturally occurring antenna. The hope is to alter the signal to serve as a sort of a sonar or a radar to be able to detect the presence of cloaked Klingon vessels. Another quick aside, wow, is it ever great to get out on location? Location shooting always really opens up an episode, and it's about time we got off the ship and made this show feel a little bit less claustrophobic than it's been. Trek episodes that feature location shoots are always more memorable, in my opinion. In this scene, we also learn from Saru that he and his fellow Kelpians can run up to 80 kilometers per hour. I wonder if that might be something we see later in this episode. The landing party is contacted by strange energy beings, presumably the inhabitants of this planet. Saru attempts to communicate with them, but is largely unsuccessful. They do, however, indicate that the landing party should go with them, and Saru acquiesces. The landing party is led to a kind of Pavan yurt. Ash Tyler brings up General Order 1, the Prime Directive, but Burnham notes that they are past that point. The Pavans are obviously already aware of their existence, so this is now a first contact mission. We then get a really excellent scene between Burnham and Tyler. Ash talks about his plans for after the war, saying that he has plans to relax, spending time fishing for trout on Lake Shasta. Burnham, on the other hand, sees a very different future for herself.
You go back to your lake house, and I go back to prison. My sentence was life.
There's also a great reference here to one of Spock's most famous lines, and while it has the potential to feel forced, I feel like this scene comes across quite naturally.
The needs of the many
are worth fighting for, are worth dying for. But so are the needs of the few.
Or the one.
Tyler and Burnham also get to share their second kiss, although it's the first one that they'll remember, seeing as their first kiss occurred during a time loop that was reset. Now that's a weird story to tell the grandkids. Also, Grandpa is a Klingon. Just saying. Eventually, we learn the true nature of the Pavans. They, in fact, are the planet.
Everywhere you go, you can feel the symbiosis between nature and the living spirit. Amazing to think that while we fight our war, the place of peace and harmony not only survives, it thrives.
Saru is suffering greatly under the onslaught of noise on Pavo, as he is particularly sensitive to it. He begs the Pavans for peace, and they provide it, the first true peace that Saru has ever known. The next morning, his mood seems much improved. He tells Burnham and Tyler that the Pavans have granted their request, but that the parameters of their mission will have to be altered somewhat. He asks them for their communicators, which he then crushes. Another quick aside here, Saru's people can run at 80 kilometers per hour, he can crush their communicators with his bare hands, and he seems to be immensely strong. Just how scary must those apex predators on his home planet be? I wonder if we'll ever get the chance to see them. At this point, it seems that the episode is using another common Trek trope, the main character who is under the control of an alien influence and who betrays his comrades. We will learn later in the episode, however, that the truth of this situation is much more complicated. Obviously, Burnham and Ash are not okay with this turn of events, and Ash takes command of the mission, tasking Burnham with altering the transmission from the Pavan Tower while he remains behind to waylay Saru. With Burnham off altering the transmission, Ash attempts to stall Saru when he goes to look for Burnham by seeking his advice about finding inner peace. Saru discovers his deception and sets off after Burnham, running real fast. Saru catches up with Burnham and tries to prevent her from using the transmitter. In the ensuing fight, we learn that Saru kicks like a mule. Makes sense given his hooves. Saru attempts to Hulk smash the transmitter, but Burnham eventually manages to stop him at phaser point. Saru is livid at Burnham, imploring her to not take the peace that he has found away from him. The Pavans appear, having brought Tyler with them, and Saru begs their forgiveness, telling them that they must make Burnham and Tyler understand as well. The Pavans seemingly repair the transmitter, and their tower begins sending a signal. Discovery beams the landing party up, much to the distress of Saru. Aboard Discovery, Saru reveals the truth. He wasn't possessed or under the control of the Pavans. Rather, as a Kelpian, he has always known fear, and his experience on the planet was the first time that he ever experienced life free from fear. The experience was life-altering, and Saru would have given anything to continue to experience it. In many ways, it seems like a mind-altering state of being, one that would have an incredible effect on him. He is ashamed of his behavior, but insists that he was acting on his own free will. There is also a B-plot to this episode which takes place aboard the Klingon sarcophagus ship, which is now under Cole's control. L'Rell attempts to get closer to Cole by offering her services as an interrogator. In the episode Lethe, Cole took Admiral Cornwell hostage, and L'Rell figures she can get access to the prisoner by offering to interrogate her, as her skills as an interrogator are apparently very well known. L'Rell succeeds in gaining access to Cornwell and pretends to torture her, encouraging her to scream in an attempt to placate the guard. The ruse works, and L'Rell reveals to Cornwell that she has an ulterior motive. She and the Admiral discuss the Federation's treatment of prisoners.
So you do not execute them?
The Federation has no death penalty.
Well, the Federation does in fact have one death penalty on the books during this period, so Cornwell isn't being completely truthful. However, the reasons for that death sentence are top secret, and I sincerely doubt that L'Rell has any plans to visit Talos 4 anytime soon. I'm really curious about what L'Rell's game here is. She does mention Discovery, asking Cornwell to help her escape to that ship. Is she actually wanting to defect, or is she working with Vok, still possibly the undercover Ash Tyler, to capture Discovery from within? We also get the first mention of Vok since his last appearance in The Butcher's Life Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry.
Even the one chosen by Lord D'Kuvma to be his successor. But he was chased away. Forever gone.
L'Rell is obviously lying here. We know she spirited Vok away herself, but what is her endgame? L'Rell and Cornwell are making their way through the corridor when Cole comes upon them. L'Rell and the Admiral feign a fight, and L'Rell seemingly kills Cornwell on an exposed power relay. I, however, remain unconvinced. I believe that Cornwell is still alive, and this isn't the last we've seen of her. Cole, however, seems convinced and leaves L'Rell to dispose of Cornwell's body. L'Rell takes Cornwell's potential remains, I think of her as Schrodinger's Admiral, she's either alive or dead, we're not sure which, to a room that contains a number of Klingon bodies. L'Rell recognizes a number of her comrades among the bodies and vows vengeance on Cole. As the scene ends, the camera lingers on Cornwell after L'Rell leaves her there. Is she dead? I think not. On the bridge, L'Rell reveals to Cole that Discovery has a new valuable technology, attempting to convince him that she got this information from torturing Cornwell. She swears fealty to Cole, but Cole sees through her deception and, after marking her with the colors of House Kor, has his men take her away, humiliating her. At that moment, the ship receives a signal from Pavo. It's an invitation, one that Cole accepts. Back on Discovery, the crew has determined that Pavo is sending out a signal on 2 separate subspace bands, one to the Federation and one to the Klingons, inviting both parties to meet at Pavo to negotiate an end to the war. They are hoping to bring the harmony of Pavo to the 2 warring powers. As the episode ends, the Klingon sarcophagus ship is warping into the system, and Burnham tells Lorca that they will have to defend the Pavans. There's one other great scene, kind of the B.5 plot, I guess. I'm not sure how I would say that, but we get a great scene between Tilly and Stamets in Discovery's mess hall. Tilly confronts Stamets over his odd behavior, and while he initially dismisses her, he eventually comes clean and reveals what has been happening.
1 minute, I know where I am, who you are, what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden, what I know changes. It gets jumbled.
He also says that he cannot tell Culber in order to protect him. Tilly tells him that they will monitor the situation, and I'm sure that it'll all turn out just fine. One other side note about this scene, I have to say I really like Tilly in this scene when Stamets tells her that she is dismissed and she remains seating, unflinchingly wanting to confront the lieutenant about this. I have to say I was quite impressed with that. I really like this kind of side relationship we've got here between these two, and I really like that Tilly's being proactive in looking out for Lieutenant Stamets and trying to figure out what's going on here. All in all, I found this one to be an interesting story. I like that Saru is front and center again. After a couple of episodes not featuring him, it's good to get him back in a central role. We learn a lot about him here, for better and for worse, and I feel that this is an experience that is going to change him quite a bit. In many ways, he acted in a similar manner to Burnham and her mutiny, so it will be interesting to see their dynamic going forward. This episode was written by one of my favorite Treklit authors, Kirsten Beyer, who is intimately familiar with the wider Star Trek universe, so it makes sense that this episode feels a little more Star Trek-y, for lack of a better term, than any Discovery episode that has come before. There are a lot of parallels to various Trek stories from over the years, and this episode feels very familiar. The Pavans, for example, a non-corporeal life form that seeks to bring 2 warring sides together, not unlike the Organians in TOS's Errand of Mercy or the Metrons in Arena. This episode also joins a select club of Trek episodes with Latin titles, including Sub Rosa from TNG, Inter Arma Einem Silent Legas from DS9, Ex Post Facto from Voyager, and Vox Sola from Enterprise. After the nearly standalone episode last week, it's pretty clear that we are firmly back in the overall story arc of Discovery, both in the ongoing war effort on the side of the Federation and in the backstabbing palace intrigue story with the Klingons. This definitely is a cliffhanger ending, and it's interesting that the run of episodes was originally going to go on hiatus after this one. I'm really glad it didn't, because this seems like it would be a rather weak cliffhanger to end the first half of the season on, and I'm hopeful that the end of the next episode is more worthy of that honor. Regardless, this episode does mean we are just past the halfway mark of Season 1, and it feels mostly like setup for what's to come. I cannot wait to see where this is going. For those of you watching, please post your theories in the comments below. What do you think L'Rell is up to? Is Admiral Cornwell actually dead? What do you think Saru is going to do going forward after this episode? Will Lorca stand and defend the planet Pavo against the Klingons? And what of Ash, Tyler, and Vok? Does this episode make you think that they are one and the same, or does it make you think that they are in fact 2 different people and not at all connected in any way? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links are all in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, live long and prosper.